it was just like everything just started to come to a head because I started getting a lot of speaking engagement opportunities that were paying thousands of dollars. And then the boot camp was doing well. And then, it was just all these different things happening. And I was teaching 4 classes as an academic. I just felt like I was being pulled in a lot of directions, and I could still do the teaching that I was doing in the classroom before we were social enterprise directory. It's just a different format. Sometimes it's online, sometimes it's in person, but it's the same thing with a lot less stress.
Welcome to the Personal Finance for PhD's podcast, a higher education in personal finance. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Roberts, a financial educator specializing in early career PhDs and founder of Personal Finance for PhDs. This podcast is for PhDs and PhDs-to-be who want to explore the hidden curriculum of finances to learn the best practices for money management, career advancement, and advocacy for yourself and others. This is Season 14, Episode 6, and today my guest is Dr. Rasheda Weaver, the founder of the Weaver Social Enterprise Directory. Rasheda studied and taught social entrepreneurship as a graduate student and faculty member, and along the way launched her own social enterprise out of her research and work with social entrepreneurs. As her business grew, she felt pulled toward full-time entrepreneurship and eventually left her faculty position. Rasheda and I discussed the financial steps that Rasheda took while still in her full-time job to give herself runway when she went full-time in her business, including opportunities uniquely available inside academia. Rasheda describes her weekly schedule in detail and how much time and money she allows herself to invest in physical and mental health and her growing business. If you are passionate about a social cause, don't miss this interview, even if you're not currently pursuing or planning to pursue entrepreneurship. We're within 1 month of the deadline to file your annual tax return, pay your Q1 2023 estimated tax, and finish contributing to your 2022 Roth IRA. If you want some help with 2 or more of those actions, this is a perfect time to consider joining the Personal Finance for PhDs community at pfforphds.community. Within just your first month of membership, you can take my tax return preparation workshop and estimated tax workshop, complete the Open Your First IRA challenge, and attend our next general discussion and Q&A call to ask your questions directly of me on April 11th, 2023. This can be the month that you really get on top of your finances. Again, go to pfforphds.community to check out all that you gain access to with the membership, and join us today. You can find the show notes for this episode at pfforphds.com/S14E6. Without further ado, here's my interview with Dr. Rasheda Weaver. I am delighted to have joining me on the podcast today, Dr. Rasheda Weaver. She is the founder, creator, owner, CEO of the Weaver Social Enterprise Directory. She's also a former faculty member. So Rasheda, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. And would you please introduce yourself a little bit further for the audience?
Yeah, it's my pleasure to join you. Thank you, Dr. Roberts, for having me. And so my name, once again, is Dr. Rasheda L. Weaver, and I'm currently the founder and CEO of Weaver Social Enterprise Directory that I also call WeSaid. And I've been a faculty member for over 5 years and have taught over 1,000 students globally. I started my career at the University of Vermont in Burlington, Vermont, as an assistant professor of community entrepreneurship. And most recently, I worked for Iona College for the last 4 years, and I was their first assistant professor of entrepreneurship and innovation at their Heinz Institute. And that was started with a $15 million grant in 2017. And so I came on and literally I was the only faculty member, so I helped build the teaching, the research, and the whole service programming.
Fantastic. And so our kind of topic today is your journey from academia into entrepreneurship. But it's so interesting because it's like your academic topic of social entrepreneurship is also like you're living it, right? So it's like a meta thing going on here. So can you tell us a little bit more about like what is social entrepreneurship and why do you think that grad students and PhDs should understand this and explore it?
Yes, so social entrepreneurship is a process of using business to combat social problems, societal issues like hunger, poverty, inequality, disease, any kind of major social issue. And it's really organizations that a social enterprise is the organization, and it can be a nonprofit organization or for-profit, but we're often seeing a combination of both. So somebody having a for-profit business that they use to make all this money, and then a nonprofit that they use to funnel the money into different charities or social causes and things like that. And so I've been studying this. It's a new field. So it's been around for 40 to 50 years. And my book, Social Entrepreneurship, A Practical Introduction, actually comes out December 15th, 2022. And it's called A Practical Introduction because the majority of the world does not know this term. And it's really important for graduate students and PhDs in particular to know this term, because many of us are already, not all of us, all have a social issue that we're very passionate about. That's why many of us become social scientists, like the both of us. And when you understand how entrepreneurship can be utilized to fulfill the same goals that you're trying to fulfill as a PhD, but you could actually sustain yourself with it. I think that's just very, very important for PhDs to understand and graduate students. It also provides an alternative career path for academics that maybe want to pursue entrepreneurship or have a different kind of vision for what they envision their career to be like, or what they envision life to be like. And I'll talk about that a lot today. And, social entrepreneurship just paves the way for us to do that.
I'm actually struggling to think of an example of a PhD who maybe would want to start a business where it wasn't socially motivated, almost like, can almost anything fall under this umbrella?
Yes, but it would have to be positive social change, because I always say that social change, a riot can be social change, but it has to be positive, something that uplifts community, advances human and community development. So I would say the majority, if not all PhDs, are already working towards some kind of societal change anyway.
Yeah. I'm thinking of myself now. And certainly there's I want to better the lives of graduate students and postdocs and the PhDs as like part of the mission for like my business. So I'm actually wondering a little bit more about the entrepreneurship term within social entrepreneurship. Do I count as like a solopreneur, single person business, or is it only like enterprises?
You do. You most definitely count. And especially because your mission is to, improve the financial well-being, essentially, of PhDs. And that is very important. I think as a PhD, I understand the importance of that, but I think maybe the majority of people might not understand it. But what you're doing is you're helping people that are literally contributing to society in a positive manner, literally building generations upon generations of, future professionals and leaders for our world. And you're saying, let's take care of yourself financially, because finances affect our holistic well-being. It
Absolutely.
just does.
That's how I think about the mission of like, and what I do on the financial side of things, it's like supporting and bolstering and helping all these individual PhDs with all of their dreams and their missions for how to better our world, and they're so talented, and I just want them to be able to do their work and contribute, and of course the finances being part of that is something that can enable them to, live those dreams out. And yeah, so that's my motivation for being here. Let's talk a little bit more about your business, and how and when did you start that?
Yes, so I started Weaver Social Enterprise Directory in 2018. 1 year after finishing my dissertation. So my dissertation was the first large-scale study in the United States of social enterprise business models. So their social mission, how they make money, and what legal structure they incorporate under. So the perfect way to help you design a social enterprise. And I found all this data, and I had literally mapped 1,200 social enterprises across the United States. And so I said, well, this information should be public. And I first just started it as a public database. And so it's sort of like an accident that happened that turned out to be now my full-time career, because I made the database public, but then I realized in order to have this website and to have the URL and to own the domain and all that, I have to finance that. And I was doing it out of my pocket. So I started selling the database in order to cover those expenses. And then once I started seeing what was happening with the people that were using the database, like they are starting companies that are helping them make six-figure salaries. And I was like, wow, okay, like I didn't know that could happen. And then so I started doing more. But then other people, entrepreneurs, started reaching out to me and saying, well, we're social entrepreneurs. We really need to learn how to make money. Like the database is wonderful. And that was great for academics and people that know how to use like email databases for business. But the average entrepreneur wanted to know how can I help them with their finances? How can I help them design a social impact model that enables them to maximize the impact they're having on their local communities? And so I developed the Ready, Set, Launch Social Enterprise Bootcamp during the pandemic, actually, because people started reaching out to me. And that's a 5-day online bootcamp. It'll be in person in 2023. We're doing it in Italy, but it's a 5-day bootcamp that literally trains entrepreneurs how to design organizations with a strong financial mission as well as a strong social mission.
I love to see that progression over those years of like, you turned your dissertation into something useful for the broader community outside of academia. And then you listened to the people who were using it and understood what their needs were and understood how you could take one more step to fulfill those. And then you did it again, and so forth. And I'm sure you'll keep iterating that way, but it's just.
And I'm doing it again now with the coaching.
Yes,
because
exactly.
after people have taken the boot camp, they're like, well, some of them just miss me because they missed the boot camp. It's a really good environment. And some wanted to do coaching, but now they're asking for a longer program, which is like a monthly training program where entrepreneurs can meet with me, and I'll help them throughout the month. And we figure out one task that they're working on, and we'll work on this throughout the month. Month 2, we do another task. And so they're coming to me with these issues that they're having as entrepreneurs, and I'm just delivering solutions, essentially, and which is what social entrepreneurs do. We deliver solutions to social problems.
This sounds like so seamless to me. But you had another job when you started this. Like, I can feel that like this business was pulling you. Oh, you can see how your work is being applied and helping all these people. And this is wonderful. But you still had this other job. So like, how did you make this transition, especially financially, from being a faculty member and having this side business to doing the business full time?
Yeah, I love that you use the word pulling, because it really was, because I would be in the classroom and I can see the impact that I'm having on students in the classroom. And I love that as well. But at the same time, I remember in spring 2022, it was just like everything just started to come to a head, because I started getting a lot of speaking engagement opportunities that were paying thousands of dollars. And then the boot camp was doing well. And then, it was just all these different things happening. And I was teaching 4 classes as an academic, and then the grading, and, I love teaching classes, but there's so much more to academia and the service and being the only faculty member for my institute. I just felt like I was being pulled in a lot of directions, and I could still do the teaching that I was doing in the classroom for Weaver Social Enterprise Directory, which is I'm doing the same thing. It's just a different format. Sometimes it's online, sometimes it's in person, but it's the same thing with a lot less stress. And so it really was sort of pulling me. And then I think, the pandemic inspired me to also just like think about life a lot differently. Like, what do I genuinely want? I want peace. I want relaxation. I want financial prosperity. When the pandemic hit, I started saving money like a crazy person. I'm like, I don't know if this is going to be like the next Great Depression. And so I went from saving like $600 from every paycheck to $800 to sometimes $1,000 per paycheck, just in case something were to happen to my job and I needed to do entrepreneurship full time. And I started just dreaming a bit more. But then when I realized that, what the pandemic allowed me to do and the pulling that was happening to me at the same time, it just allowed me to sort of push me into maybe what's really my destiny, because I always actually wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I went into academia hoping to do more research. And like I said, I was teaching 4 classes, so there's not a lot of research happening there. I was still able to maintain it, but I was losing myself as an individual in the process.
Yeah, wow. Okay, I actually want to back up a tiny bit. And like before you left your full-time position, we're in the midst of the pandemic, so it's a strange time already. You mentioned you upped your savings because you were concerned about financial security, as so many people were at that time and still are. Were there any other steps that you feel like are worth mentioning in terms of how you really got the business off the ground and scaling up and so forth, that you did financially while you still had your full-time job?
Oh, yes. A lot of this happened during my first year on the tenure track when I was at the University of Vermont. So they had a really great startup package, and I was able to negotiate that. So you have to negotiate your startup package. I think you should be very, very strategic about how you do that. And I negotiated one that was very, that it just directly aligned with me taking steps to further my dissertation research. And I planned a whole social enterprise day party where I invited scholars and social entrepreneurs from all around the country to come help celebrate the introduction of Weaver Social Enterprise Directory. Not at that time realizing that it would have been a business idea, just an output of my research and a resource to my field. And I think that's so, so important, because we're not just academics, we are a part of a whole entire field as academics, and that we can contribute in so many more ways than we realize. And so I never just thought of myself as, I'm going to use the startup package and it's just going to fund what I do at the University of Vermont. I thought about it in terms of the bigger field overall, because this is a journey, a life journey, and I'm committed to the field for life, essentially. Also, one thing, I took advantage of different funding opportunities. So a lot of campuses now will actually have entrepreneurship funding for faculty. And I'm seeing this more and more, and University of Vermont had developed a program like that. And so I was able to literally use some of that funding to commercialize Weaver Social Enterprise Directory.
That's fantastic. And definitely, I mean, it's so great to think about academia as like an incubator. I mean, sometimes it's literally, they have like incubators for small businesses, but you were able to use your position as a faculty member and your access to these resources to sort of incubate your own business. And I love what you're saying about like the continuity here between yourself, your business. Like, you weren't thinking of yourself as just a faculty member. You're thinking about yourself as a contributor to this field, and you're still doing that. It's just, you have a slightly different title in the way that you're doing it. And so it does make sense to me that investing in you and your business is still in alignment with that phase of what you were doing inside academia. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I still see alignment there. Is there anything else that you want to share with us? We're talking about these steps that you took prior to leaving your full-time job. Anything else you want to share with us about this transition from full-time academia with a side business to that full-time business owner?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that all PhDs have in common is that we are really adept at studying the root causes of why issues occur. Right? We're studying, in order to do our dissertation, we have to look at the history of the problem that we're trying to address in our dissertation, or the question that we're trying to answer. That is the same thing all entrepreneurs do, social or not, because they have to find a problem and they have to develop a solution. But what PhDs do differently is we find the deep root cause and the history of that problem. And because we've done that, once you're trained in entrepreneurship, you can see the holes that exist in the market and you can fill them. All you need is entrepreneurial training to fill them, because you already have the understanding of the problem. You have a better understanding than the majority of the planet has. And so I just want to empower you to really understand that.
Mm-hmm. And can you talk a little bit more about how that applied to your business and your journey?
Yes, because I could see those problems so clearly. And I always saw, entrepreneurship. It's not like the field of psychology, for example, where psychology is the mind. It's something that you can't really touch. I'm working with entrepreneurs and or nonprofit organizations or any organization. And so my work directly has an impact on someone else. And so I can work with them and I can learn from them and talk to them and apply my work to them. And because I can do that, what it taught me was, how do I communicate with those people? Not just communicate with journals, not just communicate with the research audience, but how do I communicate? Like, I started doing policy briefs through the Scholar Strategy Network, an organization that any PhD can join. And so they talk to civic groups. They train you in how to talk to policymakers. So I literally started doing that and getting my work out into the community. So that's how actually social entrepreneurs found me. Because they saw my work in newspapers and in policy briefs and in magazines and on YouTube. And they found me and said, well, we like that you're doing this, but this is what we need. And so I was able to then develop the solutions for them.
This is reminding me of a need that I've sort of started sensing in my own business and for myself, which is that I want to do more advocacy work. And I am now trying to see how I can set up my business so that I have time in my schedule to do advocacy work that is not necessarily going to be paid. I'm anticipating that being unpaid, but I still think it's an important part of like my mission. So and I think like sometimes I feel a little, I don't know if you ever do as well, jealous of people who have like a salary, like a full-time position where like maybe they can take some time to do things that are definitely unpaid on their own because they have this holistic sort of safety net for themselves within their salary. And I'm sort of thinking to myself, how do I do that for me within my business? How do I cover, 20% of my time that's going to be unpaid by the 80% that I have for paid work or whatever the case is. And so, yeah, I think that you're demonstrating how you did this as well, right? Starting as a faculty member, and you're probably still doing it now as an entrepreneur, right? To like preserve time within your schedule for things that are going to be unpaid because they further the overall mission of the business / your own life mission as it relates to work?
I'm so happy you asked me this question. It actually skips to another question that you had when you gave me the outline. But I dedicate now 2 days a week just to learning how to make money. So learning about how to make money and how to grow money. How do I advance multiple? So if you see my vision board from January 2022, it has all the different streams of income that I have coming in. And so what I'm doing now that I don't have a full-time position is I'm using those 2 days to just figure out how do I multiply the streams of income that I already have. And because if I hadn't done that, it would have been very hard to leave my job. And so when things started, getting chaotic, and I decided this is not the route that I want to take. And actually, if I do go back to academia, it has to be a position that I love and I'm going to thrive in. It's not going to just be any position. I'm not going to just take any job. And so I wanted to set myself up in order, for success, in order to make that a reality. And the reality of doing that is having a solid financial base. And so literally taking Mondays and Wednesdays, the same days I had off in academia, because I worked on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I kept those same days. Those are when I do my business stuff, create products, promote things. But Mondays and Wednesdays, I'm reading books on estate planning, on investing, profit first. I'm reading Smart Women Finish Rich by David Bach and The Latte Factor, all those different things, just learning how to make money. Because here's the truth. And I love this book, The Psychology of Money, that I just finished reading the other day. You cannot always, when you're working for somebody else, there's a cap on how much you can make. In entrepreneurship, there is no cap. You can make a limitless amount of money. So what your job as an entrepreneur to do, and this is what I teach in my boot camp, you have to figure out how you can get to limitless. You know what I mean? And so there's a lot of investment that happens. And with me putting aside an emergency fund for these couple of years, what I was doing with that was saying, I'm buying myself time just to learn. And that is something I talk about a lot in my book. I talk about patient capital. My emergency fund gave me patient capital as opposed to waiting for somebody else to give it to me. I decided to take this time. I gave myself a whole year. We're just going to learn. And we're going to implement things. We're going to test them over time. And we're going to make certain investments. Like I invested in a book marketing company, because if I want to sell books, that's, being strategic about those investments. And so, yeah.
This is something that I did not understand very well when I started my business. I was so focused on making money immediately that I didn't give myself the runway that you did and all these wonderful steps you've been taking. I hope the listeners are taking notes about this. I didn't do the investment in myself and growing in all these entrepreneurial sort of related ways that you've just been discussing. It took me years into this journey before I started making those investments and then obviously seeing the returns from it. But It's just something that now when I talk with other sort of budding solopreneurs or people who are interested in my journey, I tell them be taught either in a community or by a coach or at least read books. You have to make the investment in yourself, like you said, to be able to grow to that level. Because if you stay stuck in the cycle of I have to, have 35 billable hours per week to make my, the nut that I need to survive on, that's not any way to grow into the future. You may survive on that, but it's not a path to growth within your business. So I'm so glad that you said that. It's such an important message. Emily here for a brief interlude. Tax season is in full swing, and the best place to go for information tailored to you as a grad student, postdoc, or postbac is pfforphds.com/tax. From that page, I have linked to all of my tax resources, many of which I have updated for tax year 2022. On that page, you'll find free podcast episodes, videos, and articles on all kinds of tax topics relevant to PhDs. There are also opportunities to join the Personal Finance for PhDs mailing list to receive PDF summaries and spreadsheets that you can work with. The absolute most comprehensive and highest quality resources, however, are my asynchronous tax workshops. I'm offering 4 tax return preparation workshops for tax year 2022. One each for grad students who are U.S. citizens or residents, postdocs who are U.S. citizens or residents, postbacs who are U.S. citizens or residents, and grad students and postdocs who are non-residents. Those tax return preparation workshops are in addition to my estimated tax workshop for grad student, postdoc, and postbac fellows who are U.S. citizens or residents. My preferred method for enrolling you in one of these workshops is to find a sponsor at your university or institute. Typically, that sponsor is a graduate school, graduate student association, postdoc office, postdoc association, or an individual school or department. I would very much appreciate you recommending one or more of these workshops to a potential sponsor. If that doesn't work out, I do sell these workshops to individuals, but I think it's always worth trying to get it into your hands for free or a subsidized cost. Again, you can find all of these free and paid resources, including a page you can send to a potential workshop sponsor, linked from pfforphds.com/tax. Now back to the interview. Can you give any other examples of how you've been doing this investing in yourself / in your business for present and future growth?
Absolutely. So I always say you need time and space for creativity. And so I have the 2 days where I'm working on just learning how to invest and then implementing that. And then the 2 days where I'm working, and then Fridays are my self-care day. So I invested in a health coach because I need to be healthy to make great decisions. Like I'm so serious about this. Like I literally eat blueberries because it's good for your memory. And as an academic, you need to have a good memory. So that's how serious I am. You need to have carrots. I hate carrots, but you have to eat carrots because they give you good eyesight. And we need things like that in order to read. So that's like how serious I am. And I hired a health coach, not because I also have a ton of health books, not because I need someone to, I can't do this myself, but you do need accountability. You do need guidance. And so one of my friends, for example, she runs a company called an 8-figure company called The Product Boss, and where she trains females that have a product to turn their businesses into 6- and 7-figure businesses. And so I started investing I appeared on her podcast, and then I invested in her social media kit, because you can always learn something from someone else. So I'm investing in myself in a variety of different ways. And I set aside 2 years. Year 1, we're going to learn a lot, and we're going to implement, we're going to test and see what works. And we're going to track it because we're academics and we're good at tracking things. And then in year 2, I should start to see the flourishing. I'm already seeing the revenue coming in, but I'm reinvesting that into growing the organization. And so when I make a sale, I'm not thinking, oh, let me get excited and just sell this. I do treat myself, but I also, I call it being scrappy. Like I started shopping less at Whole Foods and started shopping more at Trader Joe's, and having a budget around those things so I can invest more in my business, because one day I'll be able to make a lot of money and it won't even matter if I spent, do you know what I mean? Like it's a short-term and sacrifices for long-term gain, deferred gratification. And that is what we've all done in our PhD programs, but now we have to apply it to entrepreneurship.
That's such a great point I sometimes think about the sort of, I guess, personality or characteristics that you develop in the course of doing a PhD that are going to very well apply to, it could be your career that's more conventional afterwards, or if it's entrepreneurship. It's a proving ground, and you're going to learn a lot, and you're going to be different when you come out from the PhD. And those skills, those soft skills as well as hard skills, can be applied in so many different ways. Now, just because you were on the topic of like your weekly schedule and so forth, and I love hearing that rhythm, can you share with us anything more about how your life looks today and how it's similar or different from your life as a faculty member?
I think the most important thing that I noticed, like I feel so good and like I'm healthier. I'm just not stressed. I don't have that stress on me. And being in academia can be very toxic, and we all know that. Anyone that has a PhD knows that, because we went through a toxic experience getting it. And it was a beautiful experience because it allowed us to become who we are today, but it has severe psychological and physical and medical effects on you. And I think the most important thing that I'm seeing now, and also I think the most important thing I did was be honest about that, because that's another reason why I had to get a health coach, right? So going through this, and it's a holistic health coach as well, so I can talk to her about these things. Like, yes, I was under a ton of stress last year. How do I heal my body from that stress? So just taking walks in nature, drinking bone broth, like little things like that. And I dedicate less time to work. I don't work more. I work smarter. I work not harder, I work smarter. It's like I said, learning how to make more money, scheduling, having 2 days per week where I'm doing deep work, in my business, and allowing that to just sit so I don't stress myself out, because understanding that stress isn't going to help me. And then spending more time with my kids and doing things that I love, like doing art. And I want to get back into dancing again. That's one of the things but I have to find somebody that does dancing classes in the day. That's the hardest thing. But things like that. And just making sure I just take care of myself and do things that I love. I think that's very important.
I'm a little curious about your time management right now, because I can already see you have, you've blocked off what I've learned are called theme days. Like you said,
Yeah.
you have your days of investment in yourself and your business, and you have your days of producing, saleable work, and you have your day for health and so forth. I wonder, are you tracking your hours? And almost like, do you see actually even a distinction between the hours you spend working and the hours in your personal life, or are they all like the investment in yourself could go either way, right? I don't know. What do you think about this?
I do think I do track my hours now. I had to learn to say no. Like if I can't, so when my kids get home around 2:30, I can't work with them home. It becomes stressful. That makes me stressed out. And so I have to do everything before 2. And so yeah, in a way, it's like a limit to my hours. And I do everything between 10 and 2 because making time for yoga in the morning and making time to take a walk around the block so I can get fresh air. That's just become really, really important. And that's the beauty of entrepreneurship, is that I can choose to do that. And so once again, I might be making a little less money now, because here's the truth. With the kind of organization that I'm running, I literally could make in a year. Like I've literally done the map. I started working with government officials and all these things, but I don't need to do that right now. I need to get my health on track, and my family, and so have a great familial and health foundation so that I can grow later. So I'm making the sacrifice now, but I know that that's coming because one, I'm an entrepreneurship professor, so I know how to do this. I've literally trained people and I've studied it, and it's like, it's working. It's literally working. People are buying the products, people are buying the books. And so it's just a matter of scaling that, and through investing myself and learning how to do that in a way that doesn't deplete me, but in a way that nourishes me. So I can do what I love, but I'm also, I'm not sacrificing my health and wellness in the process. Because when I was an academic, I had to. There were sometimes you have deadlines. You have to get your slides ready for class. You have to grade by a certain time. There's just all that adrenaline. And like I said, I was the only faculty member teaching 4 classes. So that was hard, because if you're teaching even one class, you know that after you've done that, you're just exhausted. It takes a lot of mental and physical energy to do that. And you have to be very alert, and you're just exhausted after one. So imagine doing 4 in 2 days. And worse if you have to do it 5 days a week or 4 days a week, because what I found is that you need a day off. You need that break day to just help you recuperate from the physical demand of that. But because my programs are online, it takes care of itself. So like when you mentioned a certain amount of billable hours, I don't have that. So most of my meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays are meeting with people to do things like this, podcasting, because I've already either develop my programs, or I can just dedicate those days to developing online programs that are then there. And then I can create the schedule of the live programs or live talks that I want to do. And I can say yes, and I can say no to whichever opportunity. It's just all about priorities. So for example, if somebody's single and they have no kids, they can do a lot more than me at this time. And I would say use that as a great opportunity, because that's the benefit of being, a solo. I'm completely solo, like genuinely solo entrepreneur. But if you have kids, and, I feel like they help me keep my balance, my family. And fortunately, I actually had my son while I was an academic, while I was in my PhD program. So I've always had to take weekends off and had to sort of navigate around that, because I still have to be a mom.
Your entire description through this episode of like the synergy between your academic life and your business and what you feel is your life's mission, and then how you arrange your schedule and the investments in yourself and your health and all these things. I don't know how much you've explored. You obviously mentioned earlier you've read numerous personal finance books, but the whole like FIRE movement, right? Financial independence and retire early. There's a component of that. There's like a subset which is called slow fi, and maybe you've encountered this concept. So like you are going to get to financial independence eventually. Like you talked about, okay, well, eventually I can build my business. Right now I have a different goal, which is, in this other area. The slow fi movement is like, make your life awesome right now. And yes, eventually you will get to financial independence or early retirement, but it almost doesn't even matter because you're living such a fabulous life. There's almost no like end point to like this goal, right? And that to me just sounds like the life you're setting up right now of working, part-time, doing also investment in yourself and your health and having this wonderful time with your family. There are a lot of parallels with that in my own life. I also only work like 4 to 5 hours per weekday because that's the schedule that allows me to spend a lot of time with my kids when they get home from school. And it's more balanced. I feel like working 8 hours a day. Yeah. Maybe I had the energy for that in my 20s. I don't anymore. Anyway, so I just love this.
The stage of life that we're in. Like my daughter is 3 and my son is 7, and she'll be 4. Like I just made up my mind and said I have to do slow fi because I love the fire movement, but I have to do it slowly right now to still do what I love because that's nourishing in a different kind of way and also making money to support the family. But at the same time, I don't want to miss these moments. So because money isn't everything, right? So like I said, I could make a year, like easily. But I want to be here for my daughter. I want to be here for my kids. I want to cook for them. I want to, have a thriving romantic life. You know what I mean? Like go on dates and all those things. I love that. And that matters to me, and go on vacations and all that stuff. And so, sacrifice in some areas. Well, here's what I say. I always say, what I can't do now, I can do later. I can't do what I can't, I won't do what I can't do, but what I can do, I will do.
Rasheda, this has been such an invigorating conversation for me. It's been so lovely to meet you. I have 2 more questions for you. The first one is, if anyone else is excited as I am about this conversation and wants to follow up more with you, where can they find you?
So my website is RashedaWeaver.com. And also my Instagram is @RashedaWeaver_PhD. And I'm also on LinkedIn, and that's been fun. If you sign up for my newsletter, I'm starting a newsletter called Weaver's Review starting January. So you'll be able to have updates on me, but also updates on social entrepreneurship in general, the field, funding opportunities, employment opportunities, and information about my boot camps and training programs that'll all be, we're going to really be doing that in the next year.
Yeah. And mention one more time, I think you said you have a book that's just about to come out. We're recording this in December 2022. So it's about to come out, right?
It comes out exactly 1 week from today. It's called Social Entrepreneurship, A Practical Introduction. And the main question that I ask in the book is, if I teach good people how to make money, will they do more good with it? And so you definitely want to get that book because it's all about entrepreneurship. And exactly what we're talking about. How do you create an organization that allows you to do good for yourself as well as good for your community?
Fantastic. Okay, Rasheda, the last question that I ask all of my guests is, what is your best financial advice for another early career PhD? And that could be something that we've touched on already in the interview, or it could be something completely new.
My best financial advice is that there's no greater investment in life that you can make than the investment in yourself. So just like I had that emergency fund, I also called it a dream fund. And so putting money aside, even if you don't know exactly what you are you going to use it for, emergencies always happen. So it's better to have an emergency be annoying than for it to be catastrophic. And so for me, when I became unhappy with my career in academia, working there, I was able to just easily transition into entrepreneurship because I had that fund already set up, because I was investing in myself even when I didn't know what the investment really was. And so I think you should really do that. And that's a holistic investment as well, because your health, your wellness, your family, your romance, all that matters into making you the best individual that you're going to be in, but that it all takes investment.
Well, Rasheda, thank you so much for volunteering to come on the podcast. It's been a real pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be on the podcast. And I'm so happy to get to know you now. And I hope to be back and share more.
Sounds great. Listeners, thank you for joining me for this episode. I have a gift for you. You know that final question I ask of all my guests regarding their best financial advice? I have collected short summaries of all the answers ever given on the podcast into a document that is updated with each new episode release. You can gain access to it by registering for my mailing list at pfforphds.com/advice. Would you like to access transcripts or videos of each episode? I link the show notes for each episode from pfforphds.com/podcast. See you in the next episode, and remember, you don't have to have a PhD to succeed with personal finance, but it helps. The music is Stages of Awakening by Poddington Bear from the Free Music Archive and is shared under CC by NC. Podcast editing by Lourdes Bobio and show notes creation by Miriam Ock.